Hello, everybody. It's Stephanie Baker, and we're back on the couch today for another episode. And want to remind everybody, as we do at the very beginning of every single episode, why we do these podcasts. What we're trying to do is sort of three basic areas. We want to talk about counseling topics because we know at Life in Abundance, which is where I'm the director and a clinical pastoral on staff, we know that counseling comes with a number of different negative connotations, and it can be scary if you've never done it. And so we want to talk about various counseling topics that things that you may have heard of, things you may be aware of, things you might not be aware of. And if you have somebody that you love or is in your friend support network that they might be able to utilize some of the information, feel free to share the topics that we talk about. We want to kind of take away some of the mystique about counseling and make it more real and available to you. The other thing we want to talk about are other ministries in the area because there are so many wonderful ministries and resources here in the upstate. And we want to make sure that we're highlighting some of those for you, because if we don't, you might not otherwise know that they're there and available to you. We partner with various ministries as well, which is one of the reasons we want to highlight some of them. And then the third reason, which brings us to our episode today, we are talking about functional medicine, functional nutrition. I personally have a love of that and am studying that. And working on a doctorate in functional blood chemistry, as well as working on an additional coaching program for integrative health and functional medicine. And so we are going to be talking about all kinds of different medical topics throughout the podcast that we do. And I'm going to be talking to various different providers, one of which is back with us today for another repeat performance. We love when he joins us. It's Dr. Ray Benedetto. Dr. Benedetto is a much sought after medical practitioner, functional medical practitioner. He is a natural thyroid health expert, and he's the founder of the Rapid Thyroid Recovery System. And all stuff up front, I have been a patient of his. I'll go ahead and just say that right out the gate. And I am blessed that I have been. Again, he's one of my favorite people in the world, and he is just so down to earth. It is really one of the things I love about you, that you talk to your patients in a way that they can understand. And y'all, that's why we keep bringing him back, as long as he'll agree to come back. Today's topic is going to be something that many of you have heard about. There's a lot of varying information about it. And some people are like, nope, never heard of any of this in my life. But it's a very important topic, and it's becoming more, in my opinion, more widespread. I know that I'm talking to a lot more of my clients recently about potential mold exposure. What does that look like? What are some of the symptoms? What are the things that we need to be thinking about with mold exposure, and where in the world might it come from? So without further ado, Dr. Ray Benedetto, welcome back. It's so great to see you. Thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, thanks for having me. I love our time together. So
Yeah,
thanks for having me back again. And I
sure.
hope we can have a great talk today and people can learn
Yeah.
some stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do get lots of, just so you know, I get lots of great feedback on the podcast episodes that you are in. The
Cool.
information, yeah, a lot of positive feedback about the information that's shared and how helpful it is. So without further ado, let's talk about mold today.
Yes.
So, all right.
Let's.
Yeah, let's do. I had referred a client to you recently, and again, just as a disclaimer, Dr. Benedetto and I do not. There's no reciprocation financially of anything. I send clients to Dr. Benedetto because I believe in what he does, because I am a patient, and I know what he does. So I believe in it. And so that is why I refer people to him. Anyway, but there's no kickback. There's nothing like that. So we just state that right up front. But I did recently have a client come into my office, and she was covered in rash, like I've never seen with anybody ever. She showed me pictures, and she happens to work for of all things, mold remediation company. And so she had taken some things to clean them effectively using a process that they use, but she had also taken some of that stuff back to her home and done the procedures there, in which case I know that she could have exposed herself that way. And so one of the things that we were talking about with that patient, that I was talking about with that patient, is could this possibly have been the mold exposure? And Dr. Benedetto, you can go ahead and roll your eyes now, because you hear me when I get to this point. mainstream medicine for her was like, no, this is, it's a chronic rash. And she'd never had it ever in her life. I understand chronic can mean 6 weeks or more, but the way it was told her is, oh yeah, this is just, whatever. And we're going to do something topical. Now, okay, that may help with symptoms, but the frustration that I have is it's not going to help with the root of what is causing the rash or the discomfort or any of the other symptoms. So with that said, talk to us about mold. What do we need to be thinking about with that? How does it
Yeah.
present?
Yeah. And so, I mean, and that's obviously that example you just gave there is pretty easy to draw conclusions on what might be causing it or
Mhm.
the source of it, right? And that's not always the case, but it's a pretty clear cut case. Like that's an easy one,
Right,
which is not usually how it goes, right? It's usually not quite so easy at all. It's usually not the first thing somebody thinks of because they work for a mold remediation company. It's
right,
usually like I don't understand. I have all this set of symptoms. And one of the things, with any kind of chronic medical condition, obviously in my world, it's a lot of autoimmune stuff, which again is on the rise significantly anyway in this country. So it's a lot of auto people with autoimmune conditions. And so obviously part of an evaluation or an investigation on somebody is okay, might there be potential environmental causes or environmental things that are triggering or causing or perpetuating the autoimmune condition, right? So it's
right.
always like on our category of things, checklist things that we look at in a patient, it's potential environmental toxins, right? And
Hmm.
today we're obviously specifically talking about a big one, which would be mold or mycotoxins.
Hmm.
Um, so those are there's a broad spectrum. There's like a family of kind of like with Lyme disease, like if somebody like Lyme disease, but then there's all these other co-infections, right? So other
Right.
types of infections or other types of
Hmm.
viruses or bacteria that we find go with the Lyme disease together. So we find multiple infections. Same thing with mold and mycotoxins. There's like a family of toxins known as mycotoxins um, that someone could have to deal with. So, step one is always identifying potential exposure, right? Like potential sources. And most people don't even think about it, right?
Right.
Like I say, okay, I work for a mold remediation company. That makes sense. I'm going to be exposed to it, even as careful as you can be
Right.
with protection, right? Like potential protection to avoid exposure. It's still a challenge when your job is to be knee deep in it. For most other people, you know, it's water. It's right. I mean,
Right.
and we're it's in our basements. It's in,
Yes.
it's not something on purpose that people expose
Right.
themselves to, but you don't even know it's there, right?
Right.
So, obviously potential sources of the most common are house, right? Household and
Yes.
workplace. People don't even think about workplace,
Hmm.
especially if, um, which again, most people will work in these larger facilities. If you work in a warehouse or you work in a school or you work in like and have these industrial HVAC systems, um, it's only going to get one spot and then it's going to travel everywhere, you know.
Yes.
So it's identifying. It's always step one is identifying potential um, exposure. And again, most patients will get to me and they already usually have a pretty good gut hunch that like I think I am being exposed or I have been exposed in the past
Hmm.
and it's just never been addressed. So it's always okay, identifying potential sources, eliminating those from the environment, of course, and then digging in to figure out. And it's just testing, right? So
Right.
there's some functional medicine testing. There's tests that we can run to see if someone has been exposed or is being exposed or has high levels of these mold or mycotoxins that they're dealing with. So it's identifying sources, obviously dealing with those as much as possible, and remediating those, and then okay, does this person, then test them, right? Does this person have this as a potential underlying problem that's causing A, symptoms, or B, maybe a bigger diagnosis like an autoimmune condition? And then it's treating it from there.
Hmm. Okay. So you mentioned testing.
Mhm.
And I know that there are several different ways we could go with that. What is your preferred method of testing? Do you do organic acid to determine anything with endotoxins, or do you do, and correct me because, this is not my area of expertise, or do you do stool sample analysis to determine, because I know with stool sample, it could have been there for years. Like it'll just show you that it's present, but we don't know when it started
Right.
necessarily. Okay.
Yeah.
What do you do with that?
So with most of my patients, I will do some organic acid testing up front anyway.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it specifically for mold. I'm doing it for some other stuff. Now, of course, we can pick up indirectly on maybe some mold exposure on that testing. But if we suspect mold or mycotoxin exposure or issues, I'll go right to a test for it. So we can test
Okay.
for the mold and the mycotoxins right away. So it's blood testing.
Okay.
You and I have definitely talked about this before. I'm sure I've talked
Yes.
about it here on these podcasts in the past as well. The company I like is Vibrant Wellness. They, I, I feel are pretty much the industry leader right now as far as like functional medicine. They do testing for basically anything under the sun that you could think of. From a functional medicine standpoint,
Mhm.
they have a terrific mold and mycotoxin test that I'll have patients do. That's a blood test because
Yeah.
we're looking for these antibody antigen reactions and levels in the blood.
Serum. Yeah. Okay. Okay. How long does it take to get, once somebody's tested, how long does it take to get those results back from
Couple of
Broad
weeks
Wellness? Okay.
usually. Yeah,
Okay.
usually the testing's pretty quick. It's usually 7 to 10 business days, which ends up being 2 weeks, like calendar time,
Yeah.
count weekends and stuff. So usually within, you know, a week or two, within 2 weeks
Okay.
tops, we got the test results back.
So, so it comes back and you look at it and you determine, there's some mold exposure here.
Mhm.
So then what for the patient? Then what for the
Yeah,
client?
so then it's doing so then it's kind of starting broad with some anti-inflammatory protocols from a diet nutritional standpoint. Um, let's support someone's immune system. Let's calm down their inflammation. Let's fix their gut. Those kinds of things, right? Let's get their body kind of like, that's always step one with me for most of my patients anyway. So
Right.
most of the time we've already started those protocols even before we get testing back with patients because I'm like, okay, we're going to do this test because we've discussed this and we're concerned this is an issue, but even while we're waiting for test results, we're going to get right to work and we're going to get you on an anti-inflammatory diet. We're going to start doing a little bit of supplementation for inflammation, immune support, gut health, detoxification, and then test results come back. It's like, okay, this is what we got. Then I'll use some specific supplementation at that point, usually some different herbs and different what we call antimicrobials, antifungals, um, uh, antimicrobials, meaning they're a special set of herbs that will kill off potential pathogens, right? Like bacteria, parasites. So if we can identify specifically like mold and mycotoxin, then I'll add a specific protocol on top of what we're already doing to specifically address the mold with some natural antifungals.
That's great. Um, so you mentioned something when we were talking about Lyme disease. You had talked a little bit about Lyme disease, and we probably need to do an entire podcast on that as well.
Mhm.
But you were mentioning that there are other co-infections that are occurring. So is that a concern with mold exposure with somebody? Are you working with that person to do any to treat any possible co-occurring stuff as well when because you're talking a lot about gut health and reducing inflammation? Is that part of this protocol?
Yeah, because at the same time, and again, it's
Okay.
always my philosophy with patients, like at the same time we might need to do some things to intervene, like okay, we're going to use these herbal antimicrobials to help. My overarching goal is always to get someone's body fixed, to get all these things fixed and get their
Right.
body functioning properly so that their own immune system and their own body can take care of the potential pathogen. You know, so like long
Right.
term we want to fix someone's body, fix their gut, fix their, detox pathways and get the inflammation down and all this kind of stuff, get their immune system working properly so that their own body can do what it's made to do. You know what I mean? And you know
Yeah.
and
So how long?
the effects can be so widespread too. That's the thing, right? So a potential mold or mycotoxin infection is can affect all these things, right? It's going to disrupt immune system function. It's going to ruin the gut, lead to things like leaky gut. It's going to cause an inflammatory response. Um, there's it's going to disrupt the endocrine system, right? All of our hormones and
Mhm.
stuff like that. So a potential mold or mycotoxin infection can affect all of those areas too, and that's what can give people symptoms in those areas, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah, totally. And so, really, honestly, we could be looking at somebody who has already has autoimmune conditions that, to kind of what you were talking about, as in the case of the person that I've referred to you, another autoimmune condition. So I'm guessing I know what the answer to this is, but let's ask it. If I already have an autoimmune condition, and where there's one, there's usually a couple. And so if I'm that person and I'm now exposed to mold, I'm guessing the other autoimmune conditions aren't going to be getting better. They're going to be
No.
inflamed.
It's like you correct. So you could already have something going on, get the mold exposure,
Yeah.
and A, it's going to significantly worsen that autoimmune condition, for example, like flare it
Right.
up, or just
Right.
send it into the stratosphere. You could be like, hey, I'm doing a really good job, I'm managing it, or it's mild at this point. And like anything else, like any other potential trigger that we call it,
Mhm.
like you can then get that mold exposure and then bang,
Yeah.
now it's on. Now it just went from like DEFCON 2 to like DEFCON 5, and then
Right.
now it's like, all right, we got to start getting the toothpaste back in the tube at this point.
Yeah. And good luck with that.
Yeah.
So when you see somebody, what is one of the things that gets you to sort of go, oh, this might be mold? Let's say they don't have any clue that that's possible. What would one of the symptoms be, some of the symptoms be that you see with mold
Yeah,
exposure?
so part of my investigation with a patient on the front end, like when we're doing like a clinical history, like that's always step
Mhm.
one with me. Which is the way it's supposed to be. It's not the way
Right.
it is in medicine anymore, but it's the way it's supposed to be. My first interaction with a potential patient, someone who's coming to me and is like, "Hey, is this something? Can you help me?" Like that first appointment, like that first appointment, that consultation with someone, like it's this. Like it's 20,
Yeah.
30 minutes literally of like, okay, lay it on me. Like give me your whole history. Give me,
Hmm.
what you had for, what were your kindergarten, math grades? Like, like we're going like, it's like, okay, what's going on now? Symptoms, signs, diagnoses, like what's going on with your health now? And then let's build a timeline up until now. And part of my questioning and my investigation in along those lines is always what can you think of maybe any potential exposure, right?
Hmm.
And it's always part of that assessment too is okay, what's the work situation look like? What does your environment look like? Like,
Hmm.
where do you work? What do you do? And again, for potential exposure, but to be honestly with you, I joke around with my patients all the time when I tell them, I'm like, that first meeting, I'm like, well, we didn't get into your work life. Like, what do you do for a living? And I tell them, I'm like, listen, the only reason I asked that question, it's not the only reason, but the only reason I asked that question is because honestly, I'm trying to gauge someone's stress levels. Like, I want to see what
Yes.
kind of, home life and work life, I want to see what kind
Right.
of daily or chronic stress they've been under, because that's going to be a
Yes.
biggie. But at the same time, like, I want to know what kind of environment do they work in? Like, I had
Right.
famously, like, you talk about like a mold remediation, right? I had a patient, this was years ago, like, and we were doing this. And I diagnosed her pretty much with an autoimmune thyroid condition. And she's like, I don't understand. Like, I don't understand how this happened. And we got into her occupation, and she literally worked for, at this point, it was like 19 years. She had worked in a plastics manufacturing company, like
Oh,
not in the
wow.
office. And so, like, we went through it like plastics, like
Right.
plastic, like
Right.
you're breathing in and exposed to all of those things for 19 years. And we
And you're
talked, and like the light bulb went off. She's like, "Oh my gosh!" Like like people don't put
right.
two and two together.
Right.
So I want to know someone's home life and home
Yep.
situation, like
Yep.
physical environment at home and at work. So it's just digging. Like I'm asking the questions, like, hey, do you think you may have had some potential mold exposures in the past? And then what does the environment look like now, and what has it looked like up until now to see if we can identify that that might be a potential issue that we need to investigate.
Yeah. That's amazing. But I think we become so, to what you were saying earlier. I think we become so tuned out to our environment because
Yep.
we become so used to it. We're on autopilot. I'm sure
Yep.
all of us can say at one point or another we've driven home and really don't remember the ride home. We just,
Yep.
if there was anything, there was nothing that was, exceptional about that ride home. But I think about when you're talking about plastics, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what an endocrine disruptor, which would explain a lot of what was going on with her.
Yep.
But I had a client who she had been through a very bad domestic violence situation, and we had a
Yep.
team that had worked with her, gotten her sleep adjusted. Again, this was over the course of 2 years. All of a sudden, she starts not having great sleep again, and there was not a particular triggering event. Nothing on her health front had really changed that was obvious. She was working at a car manufacturer here in South Carolina and had started to have to be out in some of the actual plants where there's all of the electromagnetic fields and all kinds of
And
like
toxins in
stuff.
the air. Right.
Yes, yes. And what we realized was that the lighting and everything else in there was impacting her sleep. And once she was able to figure that out, her sleep improved again.
Yep.
But you don't automatically go there.
No, no. And again, it's something that's completely ignored in a medical
Yes,
workup.
yes,
Completely ignored.
yes,
It's funny. I don't know if you remember, I used to love this show, go figure, right? It had to be 10, 15 years ago. There was a show on TV when I used to watch TV, called House.
yes,
You ever watch
yes.
that?
I sure did. I loved
Phenomenal, right? Because like people come in with
it.
all this weird stuff and he was like the
Yes,
master like diagnostician, like
yes,
he could figure it out.
yes.
And
Love their differentials.
if you remember, like half the episodes he literally would have like his other line doctors like breaking into people's houses. You
Yes,
know, they'd go like this person would be here sick and they couldn't figure it
yes,
out. Like he'd send so and so to like go break into
yes,
their house and look at the environment, look under their
yes,
sinks, like look at what the food in the fridge, like look at their
yes.
environment to see if there was something that they could have got exposed to that nobody can explain.
Right.
Half the episodes I feel were like that. So,
Yeah, that
you know, but again, like, you know, you go to a medical doctor nowadays, you talk like you bring this stuff up even just to
right,
talk about, and they're just like poo-pooing it and sweeping it under the rug,
right.
and it's huge, so it's ignored.
Yes. This seems like a side question, but it's not. I'm going somewhere with it. Talk to me about eczema and psoriasis. Are those misdiagnosed possibly ever in a case of mold?
All the time. So
Okay.
eczema and psoriasis are um, autoimmune skin reactions, right? Which are
Okay.
very common.
Right.
You talk about this client who you referred to me from the mold
Mhm.
exposure, even like skin manifestations with autoimmune conditions in general are very common. Very
Yeah.
common. Most people will
Okay.
be like, I got something going on, usually
Mhm.
somewhere. Very common. And again, the challenge is, right? So what do? You get like, oh, I got this thing, and you go dermatology, right? And so then they put everything under the sun on it from the outside in. Like, here's this
Right.
thing, here's this cream, here's this tincture, here's this tonic, here's this
Right.
salve, whatever. You're putting a bazillion things on it, and it's like, and especially when you got hives all over your body. What am I supposed to do? Bathe in this stuff? Like, it's not a
Right.
localized reaction; it's a systemic reaction.
Yes.
And so everything in the world is being put from the outside in most of the time we get to work on stuff fixing people from the inside out, and these skin
Yes.
reactions go away.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Um, so another case, a client's grandchild covered in rash, dark circles under the eyes, rash here. I mean, like all over her body, and she's I think it's 2 years and 3 months old. Just precious little girl, and
Yeah, it's terrible.
yeah, and she's frustrated. The mother's a nurse. And she's super frustrated because she's being told, well, it's eczema and catch-all term, that's not an answer, and it is from something going on inside systemic. But I think the other thing too people don't understand is our skin is an organ, and it's a filtration organ.
Your largest
So
organ.
yes, just like our kidneys filtrate stuff and our lymph nodes, all of that. I mean, so what's coming out is saying there's something the body is trying to get rid
Something
of.
wrong going on in.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes,
100%.
yeah. But I don't think
100%.
you're ever told that. And it's here's a topical cream, go home.
Especially when it's systemic. If it's all over your
Yes.
body, like it's not a
Yep.
localized reaction. We've all had
No,
localized skin reactions, maybe to like,
poison
a
ivy.
waistband rubbing up against your,
Right.
it's like you're hot and sweaty and you get like this irritation from the waistband on your
Yes.
pants or something like that. It's a
Right.
different animal when we're talking about it's localized. I'm talking about systemic, usually
Yes.
symmetrical, like all
Yes.
over,
Yes.
so it's got to be coming from somewhere within.
Right. And so by symmetrical, you're meaning both sides of the body.
Yep.
Right. Right.
Top, bottom,
Right.
like, you know, it's
Right.
not just like my right arm or my foot
Yep.
or my big toe, like
Yeah.
gout or something like that, like
Right.
it's like, no, this is like widespread.
So the answer also for a lot of people who have these types of rashes and signs and symptoms that are showing up on their skin, the answer that they get is here's a topical steroid.
Yep.
And so then they take a steroid, topical or not, and that impacts other areas. So let's talk about what a steroid does in general, be it topical or be it taken internal. Steroid in general is going to reduce the inflammation response. Okay.
Very powerfully, yes. So it's
Right.
can be good in some instances, right?
Right. If you've got pneumonia, you may need it for a little
Yep.
bit, right?
Correct.
Just so
Short
you can
term.
breathe,
Right.
right? In acute, stances.
Yep. Very
But
powerful anti-inflammatory.
yes, and by being an anti-inflammatory, it means that it's sort of shutting down our immune system, is it not? In like
Long term, yep.
tamping it down.
Yep. Short term, no, but long
Right.
term, yep.
Right.
Yep. It
So
definitely inhibits immune function, messes with blood sugar. I mean, you name it.
yes, yes, yeah. And so we want to be really careful, but a 2-year-old child doesn't need to be on steroids for
And
that.
and that's
So
gonna be their solution and
frustrating.
be like, oh, just stay on those. Like what,
Right,
forever?
right,
Like
right,
what? Like
right. So, so all right. So again, some of the symptoms that you might see if somebody's in your office and they have mold exposure, brain fog would be one of them,
yep.
possibly, right?
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
Um, it could be breathing issues,
Yep.
irritated,
If it's affecting
right?
their respiratory system
Mhm.
for sure.
Yeah. Fatigue,
Yep.
unexplained fatigue. Okay.
Which is always a
What
tricky
else?
one because that's like part of
Yes,
like every chronic illness in the
exactly.
world. But
Exactly.
yeah. Yep.
Okay. What else? What are some of the other symptoms that you have seen patients
Those are the
have?
big ones that we see is like the neurological side of things, right? When you're
Yep.
talking about like brain fog and fatigue
Yep.
and things like that, for sure. It'll
Yep.
definitely affect the nervous system. Um, and even like unexplained neuropathies and stuff like that, like weird,
Yes.
like nummy, tingly nerve type symptoms.
Hmm.
Um, Skin for sure, gut for sure.
Hmm.
Those are big ones. Again, which we see with a lot of chronic conditions, but
Hmm.
um, those are the big ones for sure. Is like brain, gut, skin.
Yes. Okay. All right. One of the other things that I was curious about is balance and vertigo. Would mold, and this maybe yes, maybe a no, would mold possibly impact, since we're talking neurological issues,
Mhm.
balance, somebody's balance? Might they
Yeah,
also have vertigo from mold?
yeah. So if obviously if it affects either directly or indirectly through like inflammatory mechanisms,
Hmm.
um, someone's vestibular system, right? That's like their inner ear system,
Right,
and or their cerebellum, which is a part of their brain that helps to control all your musculoskeletal movements.
right,
So they
right.
both play a large role in obviously balance and coordination.
Hmm.
Um, so if the potential mold toxicity is directly like it's in your nervous system, the mold's kind of like wreaking havoc inside the nervous system,
Hmm.
or indirectly through inflammatory mechanisms affecting those parts of your brain, then absolutely.
Hmm. Okay, all right. Because a lot of times people will be like, well, no, that's just inner ear crystals that get moved around,
Which it
and
could be, and if
yes,
so, that's easy that's an easy diagnostic line in the sand too, because if
right.
that's the case, if it's benign vertigo, the benign positional vertigo, you there are repositioning maneuvers, right? Like, oh, it's the crystals
Definitely
in the ear.
maneuver.
Okay, well, you do the repositioning maneuvers,
Right,
it goes away. Okay, great.
right.
Then that's what it
But
was.
if it
You do the
doesn't,
repositioning maneuvers, it doesn't go away, then that's not what it is.
hmm, yeah. So that's
That one's easy. I'll take those all day. It's like people all the time, like they'll be oh, I think I'm having this, I think I have this symptom, and I think it's like a histamine reaction, right? From like
Mhm,
seasonal allergies or something. I'm like,
mhm.
well, that's pretty easy. Take an antihistamine. Did it go away or not? If you
Right,
took an
right,
antihistamine and it went away, then guess what?
right,
It was a histamine reaction. We just got to identify the source.
right.
Sometimes it's seasonal allergies. There's not a whole lot you can do about it. Taking antihistamine, it didn't go away. It's not a histamine response causing the
That's
problem.
right.
You know,
That's right. That's
pretty
right.
diagnostic.
But we don't think like that. And the other thing is that we will layer multiple attempts to deal with the symptom, and then that way we don't know which thing worked,
Yep.
or I mean, or we've now confused it because something else maybe had a side effect.
Yep.
So it's kind of crazy for that. So with mold exposure, and I realize you are not in the business of remediation, but what I have been told is that I was even working with a college student who her dormitory had to be redone because they found mold in the dormitory. So, and I was explaining to her, you have to take your belongings; they have to be cleaned. What's in your opinion, and you may not have an answer for this, but what is the best way if my home has been exposed to mold or a room in my home? What do I do with those things, those belongings?
Yeah. So obviously, air filtration,
Right,
right? So we want to filter these spores out of the air, number
right.
one. Number two, things that can be washed just
Yeah.
need to be thoroughly washed.
Okay.
Um, the tricky part is stuff, right?
Yeah.
Furniture,
Right.
you know,
Stuffed animals,
yeah, like
like
that's the
pillows.
tricky part
Yeah.
is, doing the best you can to disinfect those things.
Mhm.
That's really what it comes down to is air, wash everything you can to kill stuff
Right.
off, and then disinfecting surfaces as best as possible.
I've
And
also heard,
obviously, if it's like in the sheetrock, like you got to have someone
right.
who knows what they're doing to come in and like rip
Yes.
out the walls and fix it, like remediate it.
Yes. I've also been told that some companies will use ozone um, to be able to kill everything in
Hmm.
the house once
Yep.
everything has been, you know, looked at and whatnot. This is a little bit later in the process, but they will go ahead and they'll do that. And so humans, pets, and plants can't be anywhere around when
Yep.
that's done. But that's also one technique.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm not super familiar. Like I leave that to the professionals. My job
yeah,
is to identify if it's a problem and figure out where
right.
it's coming from and treat it in the person. The environmental, like housing, how someone's house or there's experts that take care of that. I gotta think this is just me like off the cuff here,
Mhm.
but and I've never looked into this, but I probably will after this talk. Um, kind of like what you're saying, I gotta
Mhm.
think there are methods, almost like if you have termites and they like tent your house and
Yeah.
they just blast it. I
Yep.
gotta think that these remediation companies have methods where like, okay, you can't be in your house for 3 days, and they just
Right.
tent the house and they just blast kill kill mold anywhere inside that dwelling.
Yes. I think you're pretty accurate on that based
Yeah,
on some of the things
that
that
has to
I've
exist, I would
heard.
think.
Um, there was something else I was going to ask you about that. Oh, no, it was another comment. And this is just something for all of us to keep in mind. If you have, like my husband and I had our water heater in our attic, to me, it makes absolutely no sense that that's where it was stored, but we didn't put it there. That's where it was placed
Yeah,
when we live in a three-floor condo.
yeah, that's
And so in
crazy.
the attic. So water always follows a path, and there was a leak. And so it followed venting.
It's always gonna come
And
down too.
yeah, yes, absolutely. It skipped the third floor where it was right above, followed the venting and came down in the kitchen. We had about five different holes in our kitchen, combined kitchen and dining room area. And they came in because I know the person my client works for that I sent to you, and they
Yeah.
they came in. And one of the things that we were told is mold can start developing within 48 hours.
Yep.
So, I mean, and especially, I don't know what your temperatures are right now in Pennsylvania, but ours are in the 80s, high 80s already.
And humidity, right? In the summertime
Yes,
and all that kind of stuff too.
yes.
Yep,
So
it's gonna be
if
faster in
there,
those situations. Absolutely.
yes, if there's
Yeah.
a leak, deal
Yep.
with it, like call somebody out and figure out what you need to do, and act pretty fast because you don't want that. And there are things that they can spray that will impede the
Right.
process.
Prevent it from happening.
Yes.
Or
And yes. And
yeah.
again, you don't want to be in the house when they're doing that, but they will tell you,
Yeah.
they'll guide you through
All
those
things that need to be
steps.
taken into account.
Yeah.
Like you'd think, gosh, why is the hot water here on the third floor? That's the most silly
It's
thing I've ever heard of.
ridiculous.
Well, but
Yes.
and nowadays too, what you get a lot of for the convenience of it is a lot of newer homes are putting the laundry on the second floor,
Mine's on the third.
right? So you had newer
Yes.
homes, like the laundry's not in the basement anymore. They're putting the
Right.
washer dryer on the second floor with all the
Yes.
bedrooms because it's
Yep.
like, oh, now I don't have to lug laundry up and down 3 flights of stairs anymore.
Yes.
I just take it from the bedroom right to the laundry room, which is right down the hall.
Yes.
But there's you got to run water to that too. So now if the washing machine gets a leak or something like that too, now it's on the second floor. It's not just in the
Yes.
basement.
There's also mold that can build up inside your washer.
Yep.
So we really have to be careful about that. I've known people
Absolutely. Yep.
front
My
load
wife's crazy
washers.
about that. Like if
Yeah.
there's nothing being actively washed, like that lid better be open.
Yeah.
Like, and if
Yeah.
it's not, I'm in trouble. Like so
Yep.
if you're not using the washing machine, like you leave it open
Yes.
so it
It
dries
dries
out,
out.
right? So
Right.
and then every so often we'll just run it to clean it,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah. Do you guys use anything special when you do that? Any kinds of special cleanser for the washer?
So we'll use like essential oils,
Yeah.
vinegar, like
Yep.
like we
I was going to ask
like
if you
natural
use the
stuff.
vinegar.
Yeah, just run. But then you
Yeah.
get because you want everything smelling like vinegar in your washing machine. So it's just like you would like maybe clean your drip coffee machine, right? Like you're running
Right.
like
Yep.
natural cleansing agents through it. So
Yeah.
we'll usually it'll be that kind of stuff, like essential oils.
Well, you're
Uh,
joking about the vinegar. I make my own dryer sheets.
mhm.
And so I cut up like white washcloths long, long time ago, and I use white vinegar and lavender essential oil, and those are my dryer sheets. And they actually fluff towels really, really well. But sometimes you can smell the vinegar. I mean, I don't care because I know I'm not getting the endocrine disrupting stuff that comes with the commercial dryer sheets.
Yeah, right.
Funny thing about that, the longer you're away from that, the first time you smell it again, you're like, ooh, like it's just,
Oh man, I tell you, we haven't used, I mean, for 20 years, we haven't
yeah.
used and I'll go to like a kid's like school play or something like that and sit next to someone in the bleachers. And I'm
Yes,
just like, this person uses Tide, like old school,
yes,
like you could just smell
yes,
the scent and the fabric softener and all the stuff coming off their
yeah,
clothes, which
yes,
smells
yes.
great, but like
But
it's all chemicals and,
right,
all that kind of stuff. So,
yes. And it also goes back to what we were talking about, which is the environment and
yep.
being aware
Yeah.
of even the
You're
products
putting
that
this
you're
stuff on your
using.
skin and you're breathing
Yes,
it.
yes. So, anything else we need to be concerned about with mold? Anything we haven't talked about that you think people need to be aware of?
No, I mean, I think we summed it up. It's kind of like, again, I try and keep it simple. If someone's got
Yeah,
some kind of health problem going on, you have to investigate any and all potential causes. And if we're suspicious that mold might be on that list, then you just got to dig in. You got to, but and again, it's not rocket science. It's like identifying potential exposure in someone's
right,
environment, both currently and maybe previously. And then if we're suspicious, you just test it. You can test for it. And if it's there, then all right, what's going to be the game plan to help eradicate it, in the body
right.
while we're dealing with it in the environment as well.
Well, and one of the things that I love is that you go ahead and get started as you were talking about working on the stuff that is within that client or patient's realm of possibility, like what they're eating, what is in their environment.
We have to start there with everybody anyway.
Yes,
Like
yes, we
everybody
do.
needs the foundation.
Yep.
Like it's the analogy I use just treating people. I'm like, okay, listen, you're here. Here's what we're gonna do. Just like a house that we're rehabbing, like we're gonna
Yes.
rip it down to the studs, and then we're gonna build you back up again. So it's like
Yeah.
we're gonna strip everything down. We're gonna strip down the diet. Like we have to get the inflammation fixed. We gotta fix people's gut. We gotta get their body detoxified. These are things we have to do anyway,
Yes.
just clean the slate,
Right.
and then we can start healing someone and help building them back up again, and again, we got to do those things anyway. So if we have to do a little investigation, like
Mhm.
testing or whatever, blood
Right.
work, whatever we're doing, all right, let's do that, and then let's get to
Yep.
work on these things because then you're already gonna be feeling better about the time we get those results back anyway.
Right.
And we got to start with some of these broad sweeping protocols anyway on someone, and then we can drill down into some of the individual things that we might
Right.
find on you, but not find on the next person,
That's right.
like a mold
That's
toxicity.
right.
You know what I mean? Like you got that, this person doesn't. You know.
So, all right, one thing comes to my mind, and then we'll wrap this up. If you are working with a client and mold is an issue, are you, and yet nobody else in the family might be showing symptoms, do they still need to be addressed, the rest of the family? If one person's showing symptoms and the others aren't, because if there
If
was mold,
someone is not symptomatic, like I wouldn't, I would not.
okay,
Um, I would remediate the environment if we can
right,
identify it, and then monitor.
okay, okay,
Monitor for any kind of potential signs and symptoms that might develop that could be due to a mold toxicity. Because if there is, like, if their body's dealing with it, just let their body deal with it. Like if the body's containing it and the body's like, hey, I got if their immune system's like, I got this under control, we're good. I don't like to bang on the hornet's nest,
right.
if we
Well,
don't
it's
have
just
to.
always interesting to me that even sisters or brothers from same parents, both from the same parents, can have such different microbiome, can have such
Yeah.
different. And that again, it speaks back to the environment.
And they got similar DNA, but it's not the
Yes.
same by any stretch.
Right, right. And then we get into epigenetics, and that's a whole different story.
Right,
Maybe one day
exactly.
we'll do an episode on that. So, anyway, if someone wants to work with you, best way to get a hold of you, we always do this, best way to get a hold of you.
Google.
Dr. Ray Benedetto.
I have a website, drraybenedetto.com.
Yeah,
But I mean, realistically, in today's world, right? It's like social media, go to
yes,
social media, and search or, Google me up. I'm not hard to
yes,
find. My office will pop up. My social media will pop up. My
yes,
websites will pop up. My phone number will pop up, all those kinds of
yes.
things.
Okay.
Obviously, I work virtually with a ton of people, so
Yeah,
you know, um, people can always schedule consultations if they like. They can grab,
love that.
my email's posted everywhere. They can email me.
Yes,
I'm not hard to find. Keep it simple. Just the good old fashioned search engine.
I love it. All right. Thank you so much for being with us today and for your wisdom and your clinical knowledge. We greatly appreciate you sharing your time with us because I know how busy you are. Thank you for that.
Thank you again for having me. I love it. I
Yeah,
love it.
we'll see you soon.
Anytime. All right, Steph. See ya.